people that are likely to retire, and you want those positions to be advertised and filled. The board has asked me not to replace on a permanent basis Dr. Garcia's position so that the new superintendent will have the ability to have at least that level of flexibility moving forward. And so the increasing of direct reports to me is recognizing that I am not a lame duck.
So with that in mind, who would like to begin the discussion? Mr. Clára.
So I had a letter that I sent in yesterday because the agenda says if you have questions, send them in, and I did not get a response. So, I guess I can go over some of those points here, and I'm passing out the letter here. But, I wanted to say here in McKell, part of the misunderstanding, if there was any, because I haven't heard anything yet that I've misunderstood, is that, when you told the board about this, it was 10 minutes before a closed door meeting was going to end. So that might be the first thing that I think in the future the board needs to have more opportunity to hear this and ask questions. And even in that meeting, when I said I'm not done asking questions, but nobody seemed to care about that. So I had to try to piece things together, after that. And then, I don't agree with you at all that it's a superintendent's prerogative, to make these kinds of decisions. There's policy that says it's the board's decision, and then, on the salary schedule, it says that if they're going to be placed on that superintendency salary schedule, that you recommend that to the board. And that's what I was trying to maintain early on, is that this is the board's prerogative, not for you to just do this and start implementing it. And so I think some things, even by shared governance concept, was done backwards. Now you're getting input, and I think that should have all been done first, and then it should have come to the board for our approval before it got implemented, instead of implementing it and then backtracking and trying to get more information or give us more information like you're doing now.
Well, I take great exception to your characterization, but
Okay, you talked for 20 minutes and I did not interrupt you.
Mike,
Okay.
Can we both stop for a second here? I just need to say that you did in fact get an email response from me to this letter, which all the board members received. So if you didn't read it, you're probably the only one.
I read it.
And I did not respond to you point by point. However, in order to facilitate discussion, I'd like to pass out a memo which describes the specific things that the superintendent is in fact able to do according to law, our policy, and our negotiated agreements.
Okay, so he talked for 25 minutes. I interrupted. Is it going to be okay with you tonight that I can ask my questions?
Michael, absolutely. Ask your questions.
Okay. You see, but this is an example of the condescending attitude, that people of color feel, that you both of you are doing to me. This is the same thing that employees talk about. This is the same thing that I hear parents and students of color talk about. And I don't know if they're modeling it because, it happens here. But I would just ask for some respect and some dignity towards me and asking some questions about this, because I was elected to come here and represent my community.
You have the floor. Go ahead.
All right, so this thing that McKell, you said that the board has asked me not to replace Patrick. I don't recall that ever happening. If we can go over my letter and we want to talk about policy, that I was opposed, and I'm opposed to, I talked about the manner in which you've done it, but I'm also opposed that even had you followed the concepts of shared governance and come to us and we were able to speak about this, policy I-10 here says that the district actively works to recruit, employ, support, and retain culturally and linguistically diverse and culturally competent administrators. And then the district shall also actively strive to have our administrative workforce reflect the diversity of its students and community. And so then in policy G19, it says that the board values diversity among its employees. The district shall operate as an equal opportunity employer and will provide and safeguard the opportunity for all persons. Advancement and employment within the district without discrimination, and employment decisions shall be based on job-related qualifications and competence. And so that's when we talk about policy, that's my chief concern, is that we're not following those policies when you're appointing people that are all Caucasian right under you for a district that has a 57% student body that's as a minority. And so the last point I want to make is that on page 5 of my letter, I make the point that I believe that, you know, when you appoint people, then in this particular case, you're appointing people to positions that don't even exist. And I believe that that's in conflict with the SLASA agreement, that we made a bargaining unit agreement with the administrators and their association, that placement on this particular superintendency salary schedule would happen by approval of the board. But in this particular case, Janet sends me an email and says that these titles are made up. We're imposing those, like making them the finance director or the chief information officer. And I would just ask that before this comes before the board, that this go back to SLASA for an agreement on a new salary schedule, or add those titles into the salary schedule before the board is going to vote on placement. So I have a lot of concerns, but those are my chief concerns, that I'll share for now.
Rosemary.
Well, I totally agree with that, Michael. I don't recall ever asking that we not replace Patrick. I can certainly understand.
I'm glad we've established, that this is the board's responsibility. Even in the document you passed out, it says several times that he can appoint with the approval of the board.
Absolutely.
And so, but the thing I want to, disagree with you on is, when you're describing, the 3 people that he chose, and they're all Caucasian. And we have a policy, like I said, it says right here that that the board has, and in the school district, our policies have the force of law, or should within the district, that we say that we want an administrative workforce to reflect the diversity of our students and the community. And then we're saying here that employment decisions shall be based on job-related qualifications and competence. And that the board values diversity among its employees. And so I hear, what I'm seeing is that the actions don't match these policies that we've agreed to and that we have put in place. And then the actions that we're talking about now, when we talk about flexibility for a new superintendent. If that's really what we're trying to do, then you wouldn't add 3 people to the organization chart. You would try to leave it, I would think, as close to what it is now.
You're adding them only in the sense that you're making them directly report to the superintendent. These are people who are already here working in the district office. And I do think that's important to say.
And they're getting raises. Well, they'll be making $124,000 a year, and that's significant. And what I found is that that's very demoralizing to the employees of color that are already here, that have worked here, that have put in their time, that have higher degrees than even the 3 here. But I don't understand, and this is my objection, is that when I look at these policies and I judge the 3 that he chose, I don't understand why, with a 57% ethnic minority student population, why we couldn't have had that, out of those 3 appointments, had one of them a person of color, so that we could continue to work on having a workforce that reflects our student body.
Exactly.
Okay, so Catherine, did you want to take
But
that?
that was a question.
Or discuss? It is a question, and maybe the thing to do is to open that question back to the superintendent. I mean, I guess what I would say is I do value diversity, but that does not mean that I will never hire a Caucasian. And I don't think that's really what you're suggesting.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask.
Did you want to speak to Michael's question? Any of you?
I think it's been described multiple times that stability and not creating additional changes for the board. We currently have a number of acting and interim positions that are by definition acting and interim. And the board has been very, very clear and supportive that we want those positions hired and replaced so that there's stability there. I guess my view that you say is a little overstated is that when it's don't replace Patrick on a permanent basis, that's what I viewed as trying to maintain flexibility and providing stability at the same time, and how to describe that in more details.
I just think, from my perspective, it would be fair to say that that came from you rather than from the board. The view that it would be less wise to replace an associate superintendent, and actually we could have replaced two because we intentionally did not replace Shauna when she retired, in order to give more flexibility.
Yeah.
And I would say the board as a whole supports that, although this will be our first opportunity to discuss it in public.
But I'm just, sorry for interrupting, but my question was, why exclude people of color from being in one of these three positions, is what I'm asking.
There's no exclusion, and again, you'd have to go back to the scope of my employment with the district to recognize that that accusation is offensive and inaccurate based on my career and my interaction with individuals in this district.
It's inaccurate, I'm just looking at.
Excuse me?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm telling you that what's inaccurate about, they're not three Caucasian people that you've appointed? I just need clarity for that, I meant what did I miss?
I think the inaccurate statement, Michael, is that they are excluded, and that's the word that sets
Excluded
people
people of
off.
color.
So,
Okay,
right, so it is true, and I think what you're asking is, does this represent progress toward the goal, or does it represent a step back, right? I mean.
and within the context of tonight, I'm gonna be asked to cast a vote, so I'm not looking at your whole career, McKell, I'm just looking at tonight what I'm being asked to vote on. And I'm just asking, why were people of color excluded from that, from being in one of those three positions?
We're not excluded from consideration at any level. The description of current responsibilities and success with those roles was a way to provide short-term transitional stability as well as flexibility moving forward. And so when you look at people who are in assignments that are able to take on Patrick's responsibilities, there is a finite pool of that existing group. Advertising was intended to be done long before now to be able to invest further in the equity mission with a description of what the ideal equity person should be. And that should absolutely be a person representing the district, but again, not lip service to that. I am so offended by any comments that even suggest that, and I apologize for the tangent, President, but I think it's really important to recognize that, again, there are agencies that across the state pick a person or support a person, and that they do that to either create a compliance or to create a person to point to. There's no interest in creating a person to point to. I want highly qualified people that do great work with kids and that represent the community is what we are striving for. Where do you think those policies came from? They've been written since I've been here. When I was hired, they were 30 years old and hadn't been reviewed. The SAGE test, that's a tangent, but I apologize because that's high expectations for all kids. I was on the committee that helped select that because the state was going down a different path to have a test that just measured kids getting older rather than kids with high expectations for all. The NCLB, those in the audience that have been through that journey, we fought for, me and others, fought for an N size of 10 so that Utah stood out and didn't hide minority groups in the data like other states that were doing an N size. Again, apologize for the abbreviation of educational terms, but when it came to accountability, we fought to have an N size of 10 so that you looked at every group of kids in every school so you didn't leave them behind. We're the only ones that said bogus on the state for saying 100% proficiency wasn't the right goal. We're also the only ones that I'm aware of that got to meet the Secretary of Education, said if the state turns down federal money focused on at-risk kids, then consider Salt Lake District like Guam or Puerto Rico because we no longer belong to the state. That commitment is lifelong. So I apologize for the additional tangents, but you say people of color were never excluded, will never be excluded in our administration, period. I'm sorry you perceive it that way.
I said they were excluded from those 3 positions, but I didn't hear an answer to my question.
I'm sorry you didn't.
Okay.
Any other thoughts about this or responses? I would suggest, Michael, and this is, I recognize dangerous territory for me to be speaking on. But to say that they were not selected is not the same as saying they were excluded. So I'm hoping that we can move forward. There are multiple jobs that we've talked about that are
Heather,
on the
sorry.
student achievement.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I'm not getting that. I mean, I understand I am using the word excluded, and I meant to do that. And even the feedback I'm getting from you and the superintendent, I guess I'm not understanding why. Can you tell me what's your concern about that?
I think he just said it. No one was excluded from consideration.
But it just, so then out
But
of
they were not
everybody he
selected.
looked at, then he ended up with just 3 Caucasian people to be in that position? Is that what?
Again, Patrick and I, and Patrick, who I have great respect for his work and his advice and counsel, talked about who could maintain the work and why. What are the pieces of his responsibilities that people could carry on in a transition and be successful with? And one of those pieces that is missing, and why Patrick will be coming back on a part-time hourly basis in the spring, is we don't have a person yet to pass on the negotiating role that he has done so well in building our relationship with the Teachers Association. So Patrick will come back and do that. He's only committed through the end of June, but hopefully we find a person who can be mentored into that role as well. So it's in consultation with Patrick that people were the fit for the task at hand. It's matching skills and fit and keeping the board's options open. That's what you guys asked me to do.
I'm waiting for any other comments about this discussion topic. Thank you, I appreciate it, and thank you for asking for this discussion, because I do think it's important to bring it forward in a public meeting. So I would say that particular discussion item is closed, and we should move on to the action agenda, which is any item transferred from the consent agenda, which in this case is only the Human Resources Department report. I'm looking for a motion.
I move to accept the Human Resources Department report.
Discussion?
And those are okay, I see it.
It's the whole report, including the appointments we've been talking about. Okay, no discussion, seeing no discussion, I would say all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'm opposed.
I'm counting that as a vote of 5-2 in favor of accepting the Human Resources report. Thank you. Thanks for the discussion, and we will keep working on these issues that have been brought to our attention and that we had in our minds from the beginning.